All right, people. So football is getting underway. NFL coming up on preseason. Already had the Hall of Fame game. College coming through with camp and stuff like that. So I figured now is as good as time as ever to talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes football. So there has been a lot of changes surrounding this program. Obviously, the big one in Urban Meyer leaving, deciding to retire, or at least retire from coaching as of now. But there is a lot of expectations and news surrounding this team. Obviously, we had the transfer of Justin Fields from Georgia to Ohio State, got immediate eligibility to play right away. Um, Matthew Baldwin transferred out, went to TCU. Tate Martell before him. Gunnar Hoke comes in from Kentucky, and there's a lot of questions as far as filling some spots. Now, I am going to go over the schedule for this year's upcoming season. Basically, just go over my realistic expectations, what I think should happen as far as how good we are, how the team can connect and become a unit. Um, so, basically, everything surrounding Ohio State football this upcoming year. So, let's start with the first thing. Obviously, Urban Meyer retires from coaching after the Rose Bowl. A lot of people weren't sure. Last year, starting off the season with a lot of controversy, obviously, with the whole Zach Smith case. There's been a lot to come out about that, some stuff involving Alabama and Nick Saban. But this year, we're starting off a lot better, not as much controversy. That's pretty much over. New start. Um, you know, I thought that what happened was too damaging to Urban Meyer to stay with everything that came out. Now, we can sit here and argue all day. Should he have left? Was it big enough to leave? Stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I thought he was gone, and he did. There's a lot of people who think he's not done coaching college football, but as of today, he is. And he continues to be around the program. He's got his own podcast, doing some stuff on FS1. So Ryan Day takes over as head coach. He took over the couple games that Urban was suspended. Good start. Did very well in those games. Pretty much what you would expect. So this season, he's taking over, and this is officially his program now. He's man in charge. New quarterback Dwayne Haskins goes to the NFL draft, selected by the Redskins. We'll see what he can do this Thursday, Browns' first preseason game. Justin Fields comes in from Georgia. Didn't really play a whole lot. He expected to play more than he actually did. When he did get in, it was more of a blowout situation, and basically all he did was run. Never really showed off his passing ability as well. That's one of the things that is misconceived as far as his abilities. People think he's just a runner. If you go back and you actually look at his high school stuff on Huddle and his recruiting stuff, all of his highlights and whatnot, he is much more than just a runner. He can make dynamic throws that'll just leave you speechless, because Justin Fields, as far as his college tape, looks like a one-dimensional player. Looks like a Lamar Jackson style as far as he can pretty much only run. Now, when I mean Lamar Jackson, I don't mean he's as good a runner as Lamar, but I'm saying similar play style. In college at Georgia, when they had him in, he looked like a run-first quarterback. At Ohio State, so far, coming through camps and practices and whatever, coming together, looking good, building relationships. Now, as of now, there's no clear starter named yet, but it's very obvious it is going to be Justin Fields. Um, you know, coming through with the spring game, he didn't get to play as much as I would hope he would have or hoped he would have. It was Matthew Baldwin and himself. Um, he did have a couple really good throws. He had a couple good runs. Now in the spring game, you can't tackle, so you're very limited on what you can do and what you're going to see. Especially in him being new to the program, there was a lot of unclear stuff as far as how he's going to fit. Obviously, came because of Ryan Day being that he is looked at as quarterback whisperer. So everything's pretty much coming together this season. We lose Mike Weber. He got drafted to Dallas Cowboys. He's looked like he's been doing pretty good there. With that tweet that they had of him running, looking good. Now that was probably more to scare Zeke, but you get what I'm saying. Having success at the next level. So we have J.K. Dobbins, we have Master Teague, we have depth at that position. We also have depth at receiver, even though we did lose, Paris Campbell, and top guys like that. We do have a lot of talent left. KJ Hill, Olave. We got Garrett Wilson this year looking phenomenal in the spring game. Had that one catch, he went up and over, tip in the end zone. Amazing. There's still a lot of talent. Benjamin Victor's a guy who I just forgot about. I don't know how, but there's a veteran in that receiving room, KJ as well. There's a lot of talent. Tight end, pretty set. Not the strong suit of the offense by any means, but we do have talent at tight end. So as far as offensively, to help Justin in his first year here at Ohio State, running back is going to be a key position to help him. Being that he is such a dynamic player doing both running and passing, Dobbins is going to have to step up a lot, in my opinion. Last year, we seen him split carries with Mike Weber. Looked pretty good. He looked a lot better his freshman year than he did this year. This past year, rather. Now, that's not saying he sucked or anything like that. But as far as breaking those big Zeke kind of runs where it's like all of a sudden there's a 40-yard run, 30-yard run, good chunk of yards, we didn't see that as much this past year from him. And I think he's going to have to step up because we're coming off of an offense with Dwayne Haskins who's going to sit back there and pick you apart passing the football. He's not a running quarterback, despite what Stephen A. Smith said. He's just not. He sat back there. He's one of the best throwers we've had as far as quarterback in Ohio State history. There's not a lot of Ohio State quarterbacks who make the NFL as a quarterback. Dwayne Haskins has. We'll see how he does. But anyway, so transferring from that situation with Haskins being a thrower now to Justin Fields being able to be a dynamic player doing both. I seen this comparison up, which is I didn't even think about, but he is kind of a better JT Barrett from the standpoint he can throw a lot better, and he's a lot better of a runner. Now, a lot of Buckeye fans love JT. I never really did, other than his freshman year, sophomore year. But regardless, he has a lot of high expectations. And this program is very interesting because, last year defensively struggled a lot. Obviously, the blowout loss at Purdue. Every year we have these losses, even in the playoffs against Clemson. Now, when you hear talk about like the playoffs and who's expected to get in and who can be in the hunt, obviously we're ranked 5. I say obviously, but if you didn't know, right now it's 5. As far as the expectation at the end of the year, I forget the exact term, but anyway. So the mainstream media for sports, I'm talking your top tier shows, your First Take, your Undisputed, the expectation is your typical Alabama, Clemson. Now, there's obviously Oklahoma and Georgia that get talked about. But since we got blown out by Clemson, we have been out of that discussion as far as making the playoff and being a top level team. We have been out of the discussion when I think, last year we had our struggles, but I think for the off the field struggles, the productivity that we had on the field, especially towards the end of the season, here's what I'm saying. I think that we made a case for the playoffs. They didn't, they said no. The game against Washington was a lot closer than I would have liked it to been in the Rose Bowl. But my point is we haven't made the playoffs and I think since 2016. And when we did the last time, we got absolutely destroyed by Clemson and Deshaun Watson. So media-wise, we haven't been in that top tier level, even though we should be. We should always be in that top tier level. There's certain colleges that you should always have that discussion about. Just like with the Patriots, regardless of what they have, who they have, as long as they have Tom Brady, as long as they have Bill Belichick, they're always the New England Patriots. They're always going to be in the Super Bowl conversation. There's an expectation with certain organizations, and this should be an organization, this should be a college where we should have an expectation of going undefeated and being in the playoffs every single year. And for whatever reason, nationally, we just haven't been recently. I think as far as this year, our defense looks to be a lot better. The clips coming out of camp that I seen, there was a lot of the DBs were getting some picks. Defense was getting some work in and looking better, certainly a lot better than last year. So if we're going to be successful this year, and I will break down the schedule as far as win-loss, who could become an issue and whatnot. As far as the roster goes, there's a lot of guys on the defense last year who are younger, a little bit inexperienced, who absolutely have to step up. They have to get better. And, from the things that we're hearing from Ryan Day, the defense has stepped up a lot better. So if we're going to be successful, number one, they're going to have to step up because last year they were below average, horrible for the expectations at Ohio State. So yeah, that's going to be a key part. Things are looking good there. Obviously, the quarterback competition. Justin's going to get more experience with these guys. Going to build that relationship, that trust, learn the playbook, learn the system, and get things down. There's a lot of questions at that quarterback position as far as depth, but I do think Gunnar Hoke and Justin can be, if one goes down, the other's going to be able to step in. Certainly, I think it's going to be Justin then Gunnar, unless something crazy happens. But that would be the expectations that I have right now as far as quarterback. I think things are going to be looking better there than a lot of people think. People forget, people I've seen even today on First Take talking about Trevor Lawrence like he's the best thing, going right now. A lot of people forget Justin Fields was right with him as far as rankings go. And even in, I forget what exactly it's called, but in one of the NFL camp things they do for young high school kids, I think it was Cam Newton. I think he was on Cam Newton's team. Justin beat Trevor Lawrence, and he won MVP. Trevor won it, Justin won MVP. So, yes, obviously at the next level, at the college level, Trevor Lawrence has stepped up, been unbelievable, and won that national championship, which I'm not going to sit here and act like he didn't. But I'm just saying people forget that Justin Fields is that level of good, or at least has been looked at and ranked that level of good. And that's part of the reason why he transferred, because he wants to start. Trevor Lawrence is winning championships, and he hasn't even started yet. So that's why, people don't remember because it's what have you done for me lately? And Trevor's the one who has won a championship lately. The talk is about Tua and Trevor Lawrence. Justin Fields is totally out of the conversation. This year, he's going to have to step up and play Trevor Lawrence level to, keep that expectation. And that's the expectation I'm going to hold him to. Because you look at Trevor Lawrence in his first year winning a national championship. Don't give me this, he transferred, it's his first year. If Trevor can do it, Justin can do it. They were neck and neck as far as rankings go. So, quarterback wise, it's a lot better than people think. That's all I'm going to say. And we do have high expectations. So, anyway, after 16 minutes now of rambling, finally going to get to the. I got the regular season right in front of me here. Florida Atlantic is our first game. That should be an absolute blowout. These first couple games are going to be building trust, building that relationship between, wide receivers and quarterback and running back, and just getting experience. That's what these first couple games are going to be. Florida Atlantic, that should be a blowout. Cincinnati, a lot of people have kind of a gut feeling that that's going to be a close game or, a potential loss or at least challenging. I think it's going to be challenging in the fact that it's the second game of the season. If it were the third, fourth game, maybe not. But I do think that could be. I don't think they're going to lose. They should obviously win. Excuse me. In dominating fashion. But that could potentially be a closer game than I like. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to lose. And that's another thing. Going over this schedule, everybody every year says, undefeated, we're going to the playoffs. There's always one bad loss, and there has been for the last couple years, last 3-4 years. There has been that one bad loss. So if you're asking, am I going to say we're going to go undefeated? We should, but I'm not going to sit here and say like there's not a couple close games that could be potential losses. So keep going here. Florida Atlantic win. Cincinnati should be a win, but it could be close. Indiana gave us a little bit of trouble last year, but I do think that should be a win. Miami win. So this one's an interesting one. Last year, Nebraska kind of had a lot of hype with Scott Frost. In his second year, it could be interesting what happens. I don't think that we will lose that game. Last year, they gave us some fits as far as putting up points and whatnot. But I do think that we should win that game. I think they're going to be a lot better than they were last year, but I do think this team is going to be a lot better than we were last year, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And that was our main issue throughout the season last year. So these teams that were close last year should be complete, maybe not blowouts, but should be dominant wins. So I'm going to say Nebraska's a win. Michigan State always is a lot closer than people would like. Obviously, we got upset by Michigan State that one year. I actually cried after that game. May or may not have punched a hole in the wall, but we're going to act like I didn't say that. So anyway, Michigan State, I think that should be a win. Now, it is a night game, so that could potentially be interesting because night games always give it that extra, feel of going to war, I guess. So I think we'll win that game. I believe it is at home because we were at Michigan State last year. So we should win that game. Now this next game is the one where I could see where we slip up and we somehow find a way to screw it up like we always do. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, I don't know why you think this is the game because we beat them last year. it wasn't super close. I would have liked it to have been more, but Northwestern or Ohio State at Northwestern on a Friday night is going to be a potential loss in my eyes. Now, talent wise, no, it shouldn't even be close. It should be a complete dominating win by Ohio State. Now, the fact that this is a night game, Purdue is a night game. This is the one where it's going to be interesting because that crowd's going to be on fire. It is on a Friday night at Northwestern. So, in other words, it's going to be very out of the ordinary because, number one, it's at a good point in the season. It's not at the start. It's not at the end. It's in that middle part of the season where that loss always seems to be. Being the fact that it is a Friday night at Northwestern, I think that place is going to be bumping. It could be a potential loss. Now, I'm not going to sit here and predict it being a loss because it absolutely shouldn't be. But I'm not going to sit here and say that could be. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's a guaranteed win. That's all I'm going to say. And you heard it here first. I don't know. I hate to say it. I really do because it's ridiculous. We should never have that kind of loss. But just being the environment, the day, being at night, I don't know. So I'm not going to predict a win or a loss. All I'm going to say is that should be a win. So yeah, moving on, Wisconsin. They're a team who always, I think they're a brand name team, if that makes sense. They're the kind of team like in the NFL, an organization who has history, has a lot of good, maybe not a lot of good players, but they have a couple good players who are always dangerous. But they get more credit than deserved because of the name. I think Wisconsin is a good team. They got Taylor, the running back. I think he's outstanding. I do think he's there. I don't think he went in the draft this year. But anyway, I think he's still there. I'll have to check that later. But anyway, if he's still there, he's their number one player in my eyes. Good, good, good average team. I don't think that it's going to be a blowout, but I do think it should be a win. You never really know with Wisconsin, but so I'll leave it at that. Maryland win, Rutgers win. Penn State always seems to be close, but they lost Trace McSorley. Obviously, they lost Saquon Barkley, and then they lost his replacement. I don't know from Penn State this year. Who knows? They might be able to pull something together. I don't know. But I'm not going to sit here and say that that's going to be as close as it has been. I think that should be a very good win. And that is also a good name team to beat in Penn State because they have been pretty good the last few years. So to have that win, I think is going to be pretty good. Now, as far as outside of conference, there's really nothing here. The best non-conference game is going to be against Cincinnati in the second game of the year. And, I did say there's a lot of people who think that game might be the interesting one where we find a way to lose somehow. I don't think so. So as far as strength of schedule goes, as far as playoff time, we might be hurting in that standpoint if we do, if we have one loss or if we go undefeated. The reality is there's only going to be 4 teams that make it. So if you figure Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, Georgia, and us, one of us is going to have both. There's going to be a couple teams that have one loss, and they're going to be fighting for that last spot. It's, Texas is not out of the equation. I don't know. I think our strength of schedule hurts us this year. Certainly a lot easier than it has been in the past. But so yeah. Anyway, moving on. Obviously, the game, Michigan, um, should be a win. Obviously, we had the blowout last year when everybody said this is the year that Michigan was going to beat us. Some people were saying we were going to get murdered. Um, there was a lot of expectation with that Michigan team, and they somehow choked. I think they were afraid. I think Michigan, in the last couple games, at least in the Urban Meyer era, they have been afraid because they know that Urban Meyer owned them. They couldn't beat us. No matter how close it was, we always came out with the win. And I think last year they were afraid because everybody was being talked that they going into that game. People said that they were going to make the playoffs. People said that they were one of the most dominating teams. Then after we beat them, somehow people just said, "Oh, nope, they're actually not that good." So we don't get credit for beating them. In some people's eyes, I don't know. It's a unique game because at the end of the year, they always have a good record for the most part, or at least recently, we always have a good record. Playoff implications is pretty much on the line 90% of the time. So that's always an interesting game. Now, it is at the Big House at Michigan this year. It was at the Shoe this past year, which certainly helped us. Now, being the fact that this is Ryan Day's first head coaching job against Michigan, that always is going to come into effect. Fields' first time as a Buckeye playing Michigan. Now, he understands the rivalry to a point. I think he will more this season. I hope he comes in on fire just like every other Buckeye does. Should be a win. I'm not going to. I don't think Michigan is going to be as good. They lost a lot of good people in that defense. With Devin Bush going to the Steelers, um, and they lost a lot of talent. It's really hard to say with them because in that game you don't want to say for sure because it is always close. But as far as predictions go, we should absolutely win that game. So, as far as the schedule this year, pretty easy schedule. I'm going to say maybe maximum one loss. But I do think the fact that we have a new quarterback and a new coach could hurt us when it comes to playoff committee time. But no, we should be successful this year. That defense should be a lot better. I'm looking for big things this year, and I'm looking for big things out of Justin Fields as well. I think this is his time to blossom, if you will, into being a top tier Tua Trevor quarterback as far as how he gets looked at. And I think this could be the year, especially being that it's an easier schedule. If we do go undefeated, and if we can win if we can win without being close, what I mean by that is if we can win each game by at least a touchdown and a field goal or a couple touchdowns and not have these field goal win games like we had against Maryland and, if we can win pretty decisively, I think we should make the playoffs. I think being the fact that we are Ohio State and going undefeated, it certainly should help. But we'll see. I'm not going to tell you that we're going to be the most dominant team in college football. But I do have really high expectations. I think this is going to be a very fun season, especially with the new quarterback. I loved Justin Fields before he came to Ohio State. I actually thought it was a done deal. I thought he was going to Oklahoma because of the whole, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, number one overall picks, and both Heismans, and then making the playoffs as much as they did and having the success that they do. Now, obviously, they don't have the national championship like we do, but they have, as far as quarterbacks go, Lincoln Riley's done an outstanding job. So I thought, you know what? Guy from Georgia wants to go in and start, take over at a good program with a great offensive line, some really good receivers, some, tight end talent. That would be an easy plug and place. But guess what? He chooses the place I wanted him to go here at Ohio State. So I look for big things out of him. Talking about Oklahoma, they got Jalen Hurts. I think that's going to be another great situation for Lincoln Riley because he is a veteran college player, has had success. Now Tua came in and replaced him. People don't look at him as great as he actually is. I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for. So I do expect Oklahoma to be good as well. I expect Clemson to be good, barring injury with Trevor. I expect Alabama to be good, barring injury with, Tua. Oklahoma, I expect Jalen Hurts and Oklahoma to be outstanding. Georgia is a different story. They're always pretty good. It's always usually a lock for Alabama versus Georgia in that SEC championship game. So if both teams have a good season and both teams, if that's only like a touchdown game or a field goal game to win, the committee could be looking at putting them both in. So being at 5 right now, we're going to have to, especially with this easy schedule, we don't have the strength of schedule argument going for us. We got to win pretty. I don't say we have to win big every game, but we have to at least have a touchdown or 2 touchdowns just to have that, for the eye test. When you look at the score of that game, you may remember it differently, but when you go back and say, okay, the score was, this amount to this amount, we want that on paper to be as high as possible to say, okay, they did it against them. Yes, they should have, but they did, and they're undefeated. So I think we potentially could be a one-loss team. I hate to say that. I don't want to say it. I want to sit here and say we're going to go undefeated, but I don't know for a fact. So we'll see. Hope for the best. But as a Buckeye fan, kind of gotten used to being a little disappointed as far as not making the playoffs and or getting blown out in the playoffs. Thank you, JT Barrett. That's all I'm going to say. So with that said, like, comment, subscribe. I'm sorry that camera just shook so much if I wasn't an idiot. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on your notifications, share the video. Appreciate all the support. Let me know what you think is going to happen with the season this year. As far as our success, our record, do you think we're going to make the playoffs? And stuff like that. So let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.